The Welsh Methodist revival was an evangelical revival that revitalised Christianity in Wales during the 18th century. Methodist preachers such as Griffith Jones, Williams and Howell Harris were heavily influential in the movement. The revival ended in the late 1790s after the deaths of Williams, John Wesley and Daniel Rowland, though its influence on Wales led to the establishment of the Calvinistic Methodists and revitalised old dissenting churches. Beginnings. The revival's immediate beginnings are usually traced back to the religious conversion of Howell Harris at Talgarth Church in 1735. While listening to the Rev. Price Davies preaching on the necessity of partaking of Holy Communion, Harris came to the conviction that he had received mercy through the blood of Christ. He began to tell others about this and to hold meetings at his home at Treffica for these followers. Many consider Griffith Jones, the rector of Llandough, Carmarthenshire, to have been a forerunner of the Methodist movement in Wales. Through his circulating schools he taught thousands in Wales to read the Bible and created a generation of people which would be receptive to Methodist ideas. He himself also preached in the open air as later Methodist leaders would do. In fact, the newly converted Harris visited him for spiritual guidance and direction, and it was through his preaching that Daniel Rowland was converted and began to preach Methodist ideas. The other major leader of the early revival was Williams. He was converted in 1737 as he listened to Harris preaching in Talgarth churchyard. Jumpers. Following the Llandough revival of 1762, members of the revival were often known as jumpers on account of the habit of jumping for joy. This nickname particularly stuck after William Pantycelyn wrote Lyther Martha Philipur at Y Parchedig Philo Evangelius U Hathro, followed by a Teb, Philo Evangelius I Martha Philipur. These texts attempted to teach and defend the practices of the revival, including that of jumping. Being nicknamed jumpers juxtaposed them with Quakers and Shakers, a movement. Rowland and Harris had been at work for 18 months before they met at Dyfynnog Church in 1737. This led to a friendship that lasted, with a 10-year break in fellowship, until Harris's death in 1773. Methodist leaders met regularly to organize the work and to agree on matters of common interest. Harris and Williams undertook major preaching journeys, starting in South Wales but later venturing north. As they preached, they made converts, which they then gathered together into organized groups of fellowships in Welsh. As more and more converts were made, more and more evangelists were also created, and by 1750 there were over 400 such fellowship groups in Wales. These groups were closely supervised by the leaders and were built up into a significant and powerful network within the Church of England. Rowland concentrated his efforts on Llandough, which became a centre for the movement. On Communion Sundays, thousands of the members of the Society would travel there to receive the sacrament. A Calvinist movement. The Welsh Methodist revival differed from the Methodist revival in England in that its theology was Calvinist rather than Arminian. At the beginning the leaders worked with John Wesley, but gradually they parted company from Wesley and became associated with George Whitfield and his patron, Selina, Countess of Huntingdon. Welsh Methodists and other denominations. The Methodist revival began within the Church of England in Wales and at the beginning remained as a group within it, but its success meant that Methodists gradually built up their own networks, structures, and even meeting houses, which led eventually to the secession of 1811 and the formal establishment of the Calvinistic Methodist Presbyterian Church of Wales in 1823. The Welsh Methodist revival also had an influence on the older non-conformist churches, or dissenting dissenters, the Baptists and the Congregationalists, who in turn also experienced growth and renewal. As a result, by the middle of the 19th century, Wales was a predominantly a nonconformist country.